Hi everyone, I'm Nick Kirkenmeister from Heartland Wines, and we're coming to you today from the hi-fi section at Wolfie's Records on McGill Road. I'm lucky to be joined by some icons of the Nord, Payneham, St Peters region. And right here to my left, I've got Daniel, who's here from Argo, which is fabulous and everyone knows it from the parade. Christina's joining us from Couture+Love+Madness and is also going to tell us a lot about her experience with Nord and that strong, close connection. And of course, Nick is joining us from, well, I guess, firstly from the Odeon, but also from Australian Dance Theatre.
Yep.
So a local icon and a national and international icon. So you've got a lot to live up to today, don't you?
Thanks.
So much pressure.
Yeah.
I guess I want to start by asking sort of a collective question. Because you've all had involvement with the area for such a long period of time, either through family or personally, how do you think that your connection with Nord and for ADT as well, how it's evolved what you've been doing over the years? So I'm going to put you on the spot because I think everyone who's ever been on the parade knows Argo in one incarnation or another, but it's evolved so much.
It has, and I was laughing when you said icon because I still see it as the cafe. I've got to go to the cafe and go to work. I think how we see ourselves on the parade, I definitely see myself, depending on the relationship. Christina and I met when she was working with MPSP, and I was probably one of the agitators on the street.
Really?
Yeah. So, and I have stopped doing that recently. So now it's more about community engagement to such an extent that we always have supported all the local schools, sports clubs. Doesn't matter what's going on, we're there for them to come to. And often if they can't get an answer from a politician or something like that, they'll come to me and then I'll go in and bat for them as well. So I like to use my connections for the benefit of the community, but I don't advertise that. But now I am, obviously. Because I find that the cafe's got great resources and all the people we meet. And if I've got a question, more than likely the Premier will be in, the Police Commissioner, Liquor Licensing Commissioner, they'll come through the shop at one stage or not. So it's great to have that access to those people.
I think, Nick, and I'll swing this one over to you first. And I'm really putting you on the spot because in a weird way, you're also the new kid in town. But anyone who knows the parade, they're going to know Argo. They're also going to know the Odeon in one of its many incarnations. I did shows there when I was a kid, but now it's the home of Australian Dance Theatre. And have you seen or experienced or had an understanding as to how the local community interacts with the ADT and how they influence each other in that way?
I mean, I have to be upfront and say that I've only been in South Australia since January.
I was hoping you were going to make this up. You've got to wing a bit creative.
No, but I'll try and be creative, I guess. Firstly, what the Odeon means for ADT, I guess, is that before we were in Norwood, we were at the Wonderland Ballroom.
Right.
For many, many years. And then before that, we were in the city. So I guess in a way, this has brought us back closer to the CBD. Even though we're just on the fringe, we're closer than we were in the past. I think, but what the Odeon has meant is that we're now part of a very well-known locale. We're incredibly close. We're close to the two other businesses here today. But what it's meant is that we can offer classes like we do, and we're obviously the home of ADT, so we perform some of our works there, but we rehearse and create all of our new works there. But it also means that we can open up the Odeon, which we hadn't done before, no one had done really before, for other arts organisations to come and use it as well. So the Adelaide Festival comes every year, so they do 2 of their shows in our space. Next year we're looking at other major arts companies around Adelaide to try and bring them in as well. So I guess because we are, as in ADT is the new kid on the block, we're trying to do as much as we can to really activate the Odeon so it becomes even more well-known and more known as a performing arts venue. I mean, it's always been an art space. So Patch was in before we, they left in August 2017, and then we officially opened in May 2018. So I guess we've moved a little bit away from Patch in that we are a theatre that people can rent out and many people do.
But yeah, I don't necessarily know. We obviously don't have the history that these two guys have. I mean, that's quite clear. But obviously, the Odeon has a very strong history. I've spoken to people who I've met over the past couple of months who are, in their 70s and 80s, who are Adelaide born and bred, and they all have incredibly fond memories of the Odeon.
Passionate about the Odeon.
They can talk about. They can even reconfigure it for me, and they talk, so I understand how it looked before St. Louis was there, so to understand where the entrance used to be and all of that kind of stuff, and even our offices, obviously there's been many building works in the building, but we can still see obviously the old ceiling and the balcony boxes and that kind of stuff, so
surrounded by history, really.
Completely. Yeah.
Speaking of festivals, obviously you've brought so much to the community over the years with the Adelaide Fashion Festival. Now you're bricks and mortar. Correct. You're right there with Couture+Love+Madness, and people are able to come to you and find you here in the local community. But has your experience of the area sort of moulded what you're bringing to the table?
It's really interesting because I started with the area when I was 22. So it's been
a couple of years ago.
So it's been a good 9 years going back and forward. Starting with council, something had always dragged me up to this way. I went to school up at Loretto, not far from here. But I actually live on the other side of Adelaide. I live down at Westlake. So I live like completely polar opposites up here. I loved working for council. I loved the community. We were working with teams of people and so many local businesses, including Daniel's, and it was really great. Like, it's a great vibe. Everyone really gets on board, and it was so lovely that when I had the business for the last 10 years from home and was thinking about getting a new space, whether it was a studio or a shop front, I wasn't really sure. And I was sitting at the lights, the corner of Portrush and the Parade, turning left onto the Parade, and I saw the Felice sign go up in our shops that we're in now. And I remember pulling over and calling Dad, and he's like, "Oh, forget about it. You can't afford it. Don't even think about it." And he was definitely right. But the landlord met me within an hour, and I just got a really great vibe from her, and parents went down to see it on the weekend, and we just loved it. And it's a big space, and I didn't think I was going to be able to fill it, and now it's completely full. And Dad's like, "How did we have all this stuff at home?" I'm like, "I really don't know," because it was in our garage and I was working in our living room, and it just became really hard as the business started to grow. We'd have people be at our house through, up to 9 p.m. during the week, nights and everything, and there was just no space, and it's hard, So it's been really great to have a designated space that people can come and visit by appointment. Everything's made locally on site, and we do have a small team now, which is good. It's like adulting,
So much of the time you're helping people to create one of the most special occasions in their life, whether it's going to the prom, whether it's the biggest day, the wedding day.
Absolutely.
So much of what you do requires a really intimate relationship with your customer. Is it something that's easy to cultivate in this space? Are you finding that being in sort of a shop-like environment, having come from your own home, that You're still able to bring that experience?
Absolutely. I think people take you more seriously when you have a shop, even though you're producing the same quality of work and things like that. There's definitely a bigger level of professionalism and things like that. And the way, I guess my personality hasn't changed the way that we go about business. It's a very personal experience. It doesn't matter whether you're going to a formal or a wedding or you're a mother of the bride, like, you're working with these people sometimes up to 9 months. And many of them have become lifelong friends, which has been really exciting as well. And it's just, have a very collaborative approach. So it's all about the client and us coming together to see their vision with our craftsmanship and producing something together. So it's special.
I think one of the connections for all three of you is that you do bring more and more to the community each year. And I was thinking about the Australian Dance Theatre, with the ability now for some normal person to walk off the street, and actually there has been this ability to have dance lessons. Where did that come from? And is that something that you're hoping to continue with in the future? Because it's inspiring, but it must also be very challenging.
our public dance classes have been with the company in some shape or form for a number of years. So we did them in Hawthorne at the Wonderland Ballroom. But they obviously a consideration in moving to the Odeon was that we could do more of them, and we do more now. We used to have about 10 a week, but with COVID, obviously we had to cancel them all in March, and we're slowly re-establishing them. But even as of last week, when the rules around COVID marshalling came in, and I've been into Argo the other day and I saw the COVID marshals, which was obviously very reassuring. Yeah. So now we're again having to look at how we can do the classes so we maintain it's quite boring, but our compliance, but also ensure that the health and well-being of our staff and also the dance class participants are top of mind.
Of course.
But I guess it is for, I wouldn't call it normal people. It's for everyone. It's for anyone to come and do classes. And we do ballet, contemporary class, hip hop we have done in the past. And they are popular and people love them. And the idea that they can come into a space that is used by ADT, and, we are the oldest contemporary dance company in the country. We tour internationally. We have seasons all around Australia quite regularly. And I guess the idea that we can, that anyone can, like you said, walk in off the street and do it. And people do that. And some of them come having had no dance experience ever. And we do absolute beginners ballet, which is really, really popular. I'm starting it in a couple of weeks with a mate.
Good luck.
I think that it's, God, if I can do it, I'm sure anyone can. But
the first time I tried ballet, my teacher thought I was having a medical episode. So I left that for a while.
Well, maybe you can come back and try again. But I think it's really important for us to be able to have, that is quite a public face of ADT, something that some other arts companies don't have. We perform, a couple of times a year, and more often than not, that's in the city at the festival centre. So I guess with the dance classes, it's a way to get people in the door who have never kind of danced in the sense that they come into a studio and they get taught how to do it. But then also it opens up the Odeon to people who might not interact with the company ever, or only do it when we are in the Dunstan Playhouse or the Festival Theatre. So they are they're an interesting mix. It's an interesting kind of part of our business, but one that has been a bit challenging over the past few months, obviously.
Well, speaking to that, because, Nick, you've been talking about how lucky we are that we're able to bring these sorts of things back again. But I was wondering, having the modern Argo for me is always busy. It's always bustling. And with everything that's been going on, has this transformed the business again? Is delivery now a more important part of your life, or how's it playing out?
I think I have to be very careful how I answer this, because it's definitely impacted us, but we've obviously adapted. There was no doubt about that. I got over that in the first day. And then we just started doing everything we could. So we ramped up our retail, delivery, home family packs. We started doing cooking classes. We've got events. It's cleaned the business up to be even more efficient. Got all my to-do list stuff done, all the big checklist stuff, which was great. I think it's made us a better business. So what COVID has done to the world is very tragic. But for us personally, because we're so lucky in South Australia and Australia, we haven't really felt the impact the rest of the world has. We've had an opportunity to reimagine ourselves. And even though we're busy and bustling, we're operating at a very reduced capacity, even below the COVID step 3 recommendations, purely because it's such a high profile business. And because of that, people see people around the shop and they go, oh, they're not complying. We're actually complying beyond what we have to. And it's purely because of that locality. There's great things about the parade, but there's also that where I'll go to restaurants and cafes and they're, shoulder to shoulder. But because we're so high profile, we've got an eye on us.
iconic not just for being there for so many years, but also we're talking about fresh food, we're talking about sustainably sourced, and also just the whole look of Argo. I mean, I think the mural up on the sidewall on Margaret Street's become iconic in and of itself.
Yeah.
What inspired that sort of transformation, that bringing to life, that vibrancy, not just of colour, but in the dishes and on the wall as well? It seems like a big artistic contribution there.
Yeah, I think the model that we follow and always have is continuous improvement. So even the murals, they stay for 6 to 8 months and they change. The menu's always updated. We reprint our menus every 6 weeks with tweaks. So everything we do from, everything from the bathroom all the way out to the front of the shop is always I'm always assessing it, going, how can this be better? Can we improve that? Even if it's by 5%, that's what we do. The murals have become part of that, and I think that's because of the Instagram world. It's become so important to have something there for people. And I always look at the front of the shop and go, how can we impact people before they get inside the store? And that's why there's so many plants and colors, because it's about, as soon as you cross over Margaret Street or you come from, your side of town.
Yep.
What do we call that side?
Top of the parade.
Top of the parade. You've got to feel like you're actually entering a different zone. And the whole purpose of all that is that people stop and look and go, what's this about? And that's how, half the battle with business is getting them in the door. And, everyone can attest to that. I think what these guys are doing, particularly both of you, is you're providing a service of engagement with the community, which other high streets can't do. And that's why both your businesses are more important than my business, because we're a cafe. You can replace us with anyone. It may not do it as well, but what ADT and the couture business do is something you can't get anywhere else. And that's why I believe the council and state government should get behind businesses like this, because they keep high streets alive.
I think that extra element that you're providing, that creativity, that artistic impetus is something that is rather unique, and it does connect you to both of these businesses, because obviously the core of what you do, Cristina, is creativity. It's an artistic endeavour, refined and brought to someone in a way that they can fall in love with. What brought you to this? I mean, when did design enter your soul and become part of who you are?
The beginning. So ever since I was 5, the only thing I wanted to do was make dresses. So I used to make them for my Barbie dolls and staple them together. And our craftsmanship has grown from that, thank God.
Do you still do that? I'm asking on behalf of an 8-year-old daughter. We'll get back to that.
No, I actually did it the other day for the first time in about 20 years. I had a girlfriend visit with her little one, and she was saying to me, she's a single mother, and she said, her daughter said to me, I don't have any dresses for my Barbies to go to the ball. So I went into my office and I got some scraps and I made her some things just sitting there by hand. And it really did bring me back. It brought me back to when I was young, and that's what I always used to do. And I used to, I had like a rock that I would position them on and take film photos and go and make Dad develop them back in the day. But it was the only thing I ever wanted to do was to make dresses. And it's a really difficult industry, not unlike, these other two businesses here as well. But I was lucky I knew what I wanted to do, but it's definitely a very hard industry to break into. And, most people don't know that up until the end of last year, I had 4 other side jobs to just try and balance everything out. Daniel often see me pacing up and down the street doing other things. Most of them still engaged with the community. I was doing work for Norwood Place, changing the mannequins, doing social media. So just trying to
keep your head afloat.
Yep.
And that's why, like, when this is one of the great things about the parade is we'll see each other walking, and I can look at her and I'm like, she probably needs a check-in.
Yeah.
She's just like
pacing up and down from one end to the other.
Yeah, but I think you just actually started a new business there.
Yeah.
Couture for Barbie.
Couture for Barbie.
I reckon that's actually a really good idea.
We've actually started, it's interesting, and this time we've found a surge in christening dresses as well, because people are still doing it with a smaller amount of people. So in the last 3 weeks, we've made 3 dresses.
Wow.
Whereas everything else, like weddings, has been postponed. So, yeah, little dresses as well, which is
You
fun.
need littler needles, I guess,
yeah,
to
like
get the
tiny
job
hands done. But no, it's really lovely. It's just another way of being involved. And we had one client that was beautiful that found us on an online forum on Facebook, and wanted to get her original wedding dress turned into a christening dress for her daughter. And it was just such a lovely thing to be able to do for her, and something that she could potentially pass down.
Must be nerve-wracking though, because that's something very precious you're working with.
And it's not something you can replace. Like I can't just go and order more fabric if I cut it wrong. So but it's a really lovely thing to be a part of, and it's smaller turnaround time, and it's different. So
I think when it comes to creativity, I find that dance can appear to be the most accessible but also the least accessible form of expression, because it has no language barriers. Anyone can appreciate a piece, but equally a lot of people are nervous about dance. How do you bring people to the table? I mean, this is obviously a big part of what you're having to do, which is finding ways to share what ADT are creating. What's the secret, Nick?
If I knew, I'd be a rich man. No,
no, you'd still be working in theatre. Sorry.
I think, look, that's something that really interests me, because, as you said, dance is non-verbal. So, and contemporary dance, more often than not, is incredibly abstract. So it's not like going to watch Giselle or Swan Lake, where you know the story, you can know the story, as nonsensical as they may be, you still have an understanding of what that story is, and there's certain tropes and parts of the stories that you understand. With contemporary dance, or with the work that our AD Gary makes, they are the pointy end of contemporary dance, but they are relatively abstract. There are still narrative elements in it, but people have this perception that contemporary dance, or a lot of contemporary versions of classical art forms, are really impenetrable. So that's something that that I really want to try and work out and try and get a handle on, because you don't have to come to see our shows knowing necessarily what they're about. I mean, we had a showing at the Odeon on Friday night of a work that we were meant to do this year, but we'll do next year instead. And I was talking to one of our supporters, and he kind of looked at me, quite panicked, I guess, at the start, and said, "Well, I don't know about this. I don't know anything about this work. I don't know if I'll understand." And I just went, "Andrew, that's fine. You don't need to know anything about it." And he said he'd have to leave halfway through because he had to go off and do something else, and he stayed till the end, and then he disappeared. But it was just kind of that idea that you have to know. You have to know about the work to kind of appreciate it. I don't necessarily agree with, but it's my job then to kind of say to people, well, I guess what I want to do, and what I hope that we can do at ADT and at the Odeon, is really to provide the space for people to start to approach contemporary dance, and they may hate it. They may not like it at all, and they may find it really confronting, or they may find it boring or uninspiring or whatever. But it's just giving people the space to start to understand it or start to approach it. There's no point in us going, "This is what dance is, and you must like it, and so we expect you to understand this, this, and this." I think that's too patronizing, and it's not what we're meant to do. We have to provide a comfortable space for people to come in and start to explore and understand it, or not understand it, but just to find a connection to it. Because with the show that we had on Friday night, it was all COVID safe. We had a checkerboard pattern in the theatre. So we had about 70 people in the Odeon, where we can normally seat about 220. And I spoke to a number of people after the show, and they each had a different response to the show. They read it differently. They read into it a whole lot of different things. So I think that's really important, that we can encourage people to ascribe to seeing something like that, whatever they like. And it's not for us to say that it's right or wrong. Sure, the choreographers may have one idea of creating a work, but then it's a genuine disservice, I think.
They need to bring their own imagination as an audience member to help create the experience.
They don't need to, they just will. They'll see a work and they'll respond, they'll respond incredibly differently, and not everyone will like it, and that's good, because I think people would be lying if everyone said they liked it. But I think if we can just open it up, because as you said, it's on one part it's the most accessible because it's non-verbal. Everyone can dance, everyone can move, right? but it's kind of, we do it as children, but then it's kind of, it's
Very
beaten out.
private.
It's very private,
Yeah.
but also then it's kind of, it's when you grow up, it's kind of, it's you're discouraged from doing it in a way. To be a grown-up, you're not meant to kind of do that. Whereas everyone can move and can dance. So I think everyone can approach it. It's this kind of, it's this mystique or this kind of mystery that's wrapped around either really contemporary dance or really contemporary music or really contemporary visual arts that then kind of confuses the situation. And when really you'll have a very natural, visceral response to either sitting in a theatre or listening to a piece of music or going into a gallery. So I'm really interested in that. It's not an easy thing to do, I don't think, but as long as we can make the space of the Odeon, or we can at least, or wherever ADT is, whether it's in other parts of Adelaide or interstate or overseas, it's at least saying to people that they can approach the company and the art form in any way they want.
And I think ADT is one example of this, but I keep thinking more and more, Cristina, about what you were saying. You're taking one of the biggest risks of your life, starting your own space, hoping people will come to you, and you've chosen to take that risk here, well, on the parade, but here in the Nord area. And Daniel, you were talking about that need to constantly rejuvenate what you're doing, to constantly bring more to the table. And I think that, to me, speaks a lot about Nord. I think there are so many suburbs around Adelaide that rise and fall, and you'll see they'll be hip for a while and then they'll go away. But there's something that's constantly rejuvenating about that. And I think you're right to take a punt on Nord, because I think it'll be here, last year, this year, and next year. But what do you think it is about this area that makes it so... I don't know. It's just so constant. There's always something happening here. It never seems to fall away like so many other places do. Come on, Daniel, you're up.
That's a big breath, because I think what the parade's got going for it is, in a mainstream sense, is it's accessible. It's easy to drive down, easy to get an on-street car park, and that's a big thing for Adelaideans. I think we offer all the big key draw cards. We have cinemas, supermarkets, et cetera, et cetera. Then beyond that, we're still cosmopolitan to a degree. And Cristina, with the history that she's had with the parade and knowing the Food and Wine Festival, this is not the parade at its best. We know that the parade can be a whole lot more than what it is. And it's about, giving the community that chance again to come back to life, because, you were around when the...
Yes. Nord Food and Wine
was around.
Yep.
Loved it.
Sure, it got a bit out of hand towards the end, but it was the only event. It was an excellent
Really
event.
good event.
100,000 people on the street. Like, no one does that. And, the accessible parks around the area, then the heritage, I think, is what is so unique about our area, that we can say that, Vari's Gourmet Deli was across the road from us, and the family that used to run the fish cafe, Mario's Fish Cafe. It's all those things of we all know each other and we're taking on a legacy. Because when we took over the Argo site, my dad wanted to rename the site after him. He was going to call it Nev's Cafe. And I'm just like, over my dead body, are we doing that?
Quite the same ring,
No,
does
it doesn't. And because it's, the owners of, the original owner of Argo's, the Coronas family, they still come into the shop. So there's this continuity about what we're all doing. And the parade has got such a bright future ahead of it. And I'm looking forward to be part of that. I think we all are.
Definitely.
And it's now about how do we link together a bit more. Because I think when COVID hit, we all just went into our shells of going, head
what do
down.
we do?
Yeah, let's just work really hard.
Yeah.
And now we can have that engagement. And it's, ADT, before you came, you were on board last year, I was in WA, and it was about October, November, and ADD were doing a tour in WA, but it was in a small country town, 100 kilometers inland. And I saw a couple of the dancers. I'm like, what are you guys doing here? And
bringing Nord to the world.
Yeah. And so we have all this on our doorstep. We just need now to, really ramp it up.
Yeah, I think I've grown up in this area, and that's going back a long way. And a lot of the businesses you've mentioned, they're not all here anymore, but there's something new, something great coming to take the place, and it's always there. Guys, it's been an absolute honour to chat with the three of you. I've actually learned a lot, and that makes it a lot more fun. So, Cristina,
Thank you.
Daniel,
Thank you.
and Nick, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your contribution to the community. Guys, thanks for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've certainly enjoyed the chat, and looking forward to seeing you around the neighbourhood. Cheers.